indivisible, this for all. All right, let's move on to item 3, roll call and determination of quorum. Mr. Lang.
We are beginning the forum. Lori Hayes,
Here.
All right, so are
Will
we,
McIntosh,
Here.
that's me and
Crystal Vanu,
Here.
Jonathan Gerlach,
Here. Okay, so.
Gannon Holm. Gannon Holm,
No, stick.
She's here. She just went to.
We've been here.
Drew Mullins,
Present. Oh, no, that's fine.
Chris Yakubowski,
Here.
Ed Zomke,
Here.
Emily Young,
Here.
That's fine.
Marcy Parker,
Here.
Robert Schneider.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lang. Let's move on to item 4, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So approved. So moved.
There you go.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? All right, the agenda is approved. All right, let's move on to item 5, public hearings. Item 5A, public hearing for resolution 25-26, adopting an amendment to the FY 24-27 Transportation Improvement Program to adjust funding for FRT 0018 FXB Goes Security and Fiber Project.
We have a public hearing
Yes.
from James Henry. FAMPO public hearing. I would like to state support for the amendment to the FY 24-27 Transportation Improvement Program to adjust funding for UBC FRT 0018 FXB Go Security and Fiber Project. When I installed digital display signage at the Silver Spring Transit Center in 2015, we chose direct fiber optic connections for the reasons outlined in the amendment document. Although Wi-Fi and cellular communication can be cheaper in the short run, the long-run benefits of capacity, capability, and transitional expansion and support investing in the hardwired security of the fiber optic connection for the long-run viability of the communication network. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this TIP amendment, James Henry.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to participate in this public hearing?
We have an additional comment
Okay, another comment?
from Robert Keith Thomas. I want to support with my support for increasing funding for security and fiber project.
Okay. Anyone in the room
Yeah, you have Rito and.
for this matter? Okay,
Is there anyone online? Just.
okay, then I'm going to go ahead and declare the public hearing to be closed.
Right.
Now, is this an item that we need a motion on?
Coming later.
Coming later.
It's consent agenda.
Okay. All right, let's move on to item 6, public involvement. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Anyone in the room would like to address the policy committee?
I'm Joe Brito. I'm from Stafford County. I represent over 5,000 people that supported a petition for a new western corridor that parallels 95. I named it the interconnector, as it connects approximately 20 roads to give us alternate routes. The 20 alternate routes, or the 20 roads it connects to, will provide over 100 different alternate routes in different combinations. So that is how we get out of gridlock with alternate routes, because people, driving on the road can avoid the most busiest congested areas with alternate routes, and that's something we don't have. This Fredericksburg region basically has 2 north-south roads that have 16 lanes, but there's 10 east-west roads with 34 lanes. So the problem is we don't have enough north-south lanes. So you have to go east-west in order to get to the north-south lanes, and that's what's making the areas around 95 and Route 1 more congested. So if you spread that out, you diffuse the traffic around 95 and Route One, and it spreads it out. So you have higher time-saving factors, shorter routes, connecting the population centers with the destination centers and the work centers with the shortest possible route is just the plain, smart planning. And that's what this does. And it also allows for the Fred bus system to have another route. So basically what we can do is have the Fred bus system go in two different directions. You have one bus that might go clockwise, that would go down the new road, and the other goes counterclockwise. So if there's one side that's congested, people can jump on the other bus that's going the other way and avoid the congested areas and get to their destination without going through the congested area and sitting in traffic. Now, this proposal starts out at, it uses 5 existing roads to keep costs down, keep the impacts down, and the environmental impacts down. So it would start from 610, and the proposal was to use the Mall Road that already has a traffic circle there that's just waiting for a connection to Harrison Road. So if the road is built, traffic on Route 3, Salem Church Road, and Route 1. Traffic on Salem Church Road. Leave traffic at the busiest congestion.
Time's up.
What that is, I don't know.
Just letting you finish your sentence.
Yeah.
It's a run-on, so hard to say.
But, I just want to say that this beautiful
We gotta move
waterfall
on to the next.
is
Thank you, Mr. Brito.
impacted by
Yeah.
corridor.
Do we have anybody else who would like to speak?
Good evening, members of the policy board. My name is Al Watkins, and I live in the George Washington District of Stafford County. Last week, the City Planning Commission grappled with how to advance forward, either by establishing a data center TOD or requiring special use permits. It'll be up to the City Council to decide tomorrow. Despite some disagreement within the PC about how to move forward, there was one issue that all the members unanimously agreed to. That based upon the information they had gleaned from the city council members, that the option A bridge was the preference of the city and that it should specifically be added to the comprehensive plan. I'm really not surprised by this. I do recall a council member stating at the January policy meeting here that this is the bridge that the data tells us is a smart bridge to build. Let me see if I understand this correctly. Does the city prefer a river crossing that the modeling identifies as the least travel demand, utilized by about 6,000 to 8,000 less drivers per day? That prefers an option that requires the longest bridge, that prefers an option that is estimated to be the most expensive, that prefers a bridge that would be the least attractive for shared use pedestrians and cyclists because of its close proximity to the added noise and obstructed view caused by the I-95 bridge. Prefers an option that, instead of utilizing about 3 miles of existing infrastructure, will require over 2 miles of brand new road and disturb over twice as much land as the other options. And what about that land that the preferred option would disturb? The only option whose path runs continuously very close to several streams, crosses the river only 33 yards away from its mouth, and is the only stream that's graded by the Friends of the Rappahannock with A and B scores. And then one south of the river is quite close to Quarry Lake and it's eroding cliff face. It's not a stretch to figure that if VEPCO had originally owned Stafford County plat number 52-3, the 86 acres of land where the option A bridge is to cross, instead of a private citizen named Alvin Payton, that the city would have acquired that as well in 1969. And thus probably a part of the 2006 deed of easement, especially since this particular area has more factors that make it the most environmentally sensitive area when compared to the other 4 crossings. A city council member once said to me recently that any bridge is just as worthy as another, whether or not it has protection in place or not. I fully understand the city still supports the idea for a new bridge and will likely establish right-of-way stipulations for any developer. But I do question as to whether or not they will support a bridge with an option A, or will they potentially prevent the other crossings if it's not option A? Or are they? Thank you.
Other.
Do you have some?
Got some, we have some, letters.
Yes, we do.
All right.
Okay, so we have several public comments that we have received. One of them we received only today, so it is not on your agendas. From Abraham Mordofa, he states, I have concerns about Mine Road. I see people walking and bike without sidewalk. Please let me know if any road project planning for Mine Road to the future and who I can contact for any further Mine Road project. Thanks. Mine Road. I believe that this is also. Okay, from E. Suzanne Willis. I'm not sure to whom I should address this letter, so I hope it gets to the correct people in this letter and a letter in this email and a letter I am sending as well. I am asking for your assistance in fixing some of the problems on River Road. My name is Elizabeth Suzanne Willis, and I live at 5515 River Road, 22407. I am one of the few who have a 22407 zip code, but I am considered a Fredericksburg resident and I pay taxes to Fredericksburg. I plan to attend the 2/10/2025 meeting. Please read my attached email. This is the attached letter. I'm writing you today to discuss the stretch of River Road, which runs from the Bragg and Fall Hill intersection to where it meets Wood Furnace Road. I need your help in taking care of this marvelous, special, and historic road. This is the road that the indigenous people made traveling west from the Rappahannock River. Through the years, their path became a road, and the shape of the road follows the shape of the Rappahannock River. River Road winds through canopy trees in which was once a rural area where nature predominated. Let's save it. Today, the road is a 2-lane, 20-foot wide blacktop road with shoulders about 20 inches on each side. In some places, it is closer to a 12-inch shoulder. River Road is now used as the cut through for drivers to avoid traffic of Highway 3. It is well trafficked. The busiest and heaviest traffic is the time between 6 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 7 p.m. with what is called computer traffic. This heavy traffic needs to be dealt with. I need you to protect the road, protect the drivers on the road, protect the homeowners who live on the road, and protect the environment of this historic River Road. River Road has not been built for all this traffic. The road is narrow and curvy with very little shoulders. It cannot handle the weight of the trucks or the speed of the cars. We can walk that road, see the shoulders crumbling, unable to handle all that weight. Cars drive too fast on this road. We who live here can attest to the many accidents which could have been prevented. Therefore, I am asking you to address the following. 1. Limit the weight of vehicles that can drive on the road. The road is not made to handle these heavy weights. Can you still use signs that say local use only or other terms one uses to limit the weight and size of vehicles? Trucks can weigh between 3 to 40 tons on Virginia roads. You add a weight limit to vehicles to protect the road. 2. Limit the speed of vehicles. Today, some areas on the road list 35 miles per hour and some areas say 40 miles per hour and in a few spots 30 miles per hour. These speed limits need to go back to the speeds they were when I first lived on River Road. Much of the road was limited to 25 miles per hour. Nothing was over 35 miles per hour. I find it interesting when there was far less traffic than today, the speeds were lower and therefore safer than compared to now. Remember, most people drive 5 miles faster than the speed allows. Does this mean some people are driving around 50 miles on this narrow winding road? Would you lower the speed limits to protect the drivers and the homeowners? Story. One of the many accidents took out 4 mailboxes and missed one, mine. The car hit 2 of the mailboxes, flew over the water ditch, came back around on the road, taking out 2 more mailboxes and leaving mine standing in the middle. Then it turned over and skidded about 200 feet before stopping. Another way speeds could be reduced would be to the placements of speed bumps in various places. I ride on Hanson Avenue a great deal, and it has 3 speed bumps in the shortest area I drive over, making Hanson Avenue safer for the people who live there. Would you add some speed bumps on River Road? Story. When I am slow down to turn in my driveway, my blinkers don't seem to be enough to get the people's attention. So I put my hazard warning flasher as to not get run down by the cars behind me. These drivers are annoyed when they think someone is driving too slowly, so they speed past me and toot their horns in irritation. 4. Special signage could slow down those who speed. I don't know the exact words, but on some parts of River Road, it warns you there are many residents together, so be careful in this area. The 5500 block or River Road could use one of these signs. 5. The road had a canopy of trees, making it a.
Mr. Hine, that's 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next comment comes from Larry Olson. My concern is 40+ years and still only 3 river crossings. How on earth do we get a bridge in the western suburbs? And the comments that we
Model of brevity, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, there's no more members, no more public involvement, then I'd like to move on to item 7, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstaining? All right, let's move on to item 8, administrator report, Mr. Hollis.
Thank you, Chairperson. I was asked to send these out in advance and so that you could have the transit data to review at your leisure. So you've not been blindsided by anything this month in the presentation. You already know what's in it. Scroll down, please, to the first page. I focused on the transit ridership, which I was asked to keep an eye on and to bring to your attention. So now that we've finished 2024, we can actually look at the total figures for 2024. And if you look at that, the VRE ridership for the Fredericksburg line only. So I asked our transit operators to exclude transit options that they are involved with that do not come to our region. So this is only the Fredericksburg line of VRE's ridership, and you can see how the ridership went through the year of 2024. The red line is FXB Go, and that is the ridership through the year, how it went. And at the bottom, you can see the OmniRide southern routes, only the OmniRide routes that come to our region. So that's what's happening with the global picture. And if you look carefully, you'll see that those lines kind of track each other, not perfectly, but it shows you that transit is seasonal. So the weather and whether or not it's the Christmas holidays affects the transit ridership, and it doesn't matter whether it's a train, a commuter bus, or a local bus. The same sort of things affect the ridership, the weather, the holidays, and those sorts of things. That's exactly what happens there. Towards the end of the year in December, the transit ridership drops off every time. It's cyclical, and it is also seasonal. Next slide. So now we break them down individually. So this is, I've done them by quarter for VRE. You can see the individual train numbers down the left. You can see the actual ridership for the boardings and alightings at each of the stations, right? So you'll see that some of the trains on VRE are more popular than others. You'll see train 305, I think it is, 20,000 riders getting off in the region, and that is a very popular route because of the time that it leaves here and the time that it comes back. Next one. There's April to June. You can see a similar sort of pattern. It's again the train 305 that is the most popular in the region. These are only for trains that come to Brook, Leland, Fredericksburg, and Spotsylvania. We look specifically at those numbers so you can see what's happening locally. And if you wanted to look at your particular train station nearest you, you can see what the numbers are there for a particular station, a particular train number, etc. It's quite detailed. Next one. Same thing, July to September. Again, 305 is still way ahead of the other trains in terms of ridership. And then next slide is October to December. Similar sort of thing, but you can see the total numbers are just slightly less in even because it trails off in the December month. That's VRE's numbers in detail for our particular line. Next slide. Then if we look at FXB Go, you can see there the total at the bottom. That gives you the total number of riders for a particular month. So 28,000, 29,000, 31,000, etc. But you can see by month and you can see by route. So the Spotsylvania routes there in the middle, the Stafford routes at the bottom, and the Fredericksburg and connected routes at the top. So you can look at the routes in your locality. You can look at the month of data. And so you can get the whole picture there by looking through each of those. If you want to know the route that comes near my neighborhood, what is it called? What is the ridership like? When is the better months, the worst months, and that gives you a good picture for the whole year of 2024. That doesn't include the VRE feeder buses and a thing called the Eagle Express route, which operates seasonally. The Eagle Express is very popular, really, really popular, but it operates when the university is in session. So when UMW is not in session, they suspend the Eagle Express until the young people come back to university, and then it runs again. So because it's seasonal, they've removed that from the data, but it's a very popular route in season. Next slide. I just put this on, so if you're sitting at home and wondering, well, where does the S4 bus go? You've actually got the route maps there. That's the only purpose of this map, is to just show you where the particular routes go, in case you're not sure where a particular bus goes. That's the actual route system. Next slide. And there is a comparison with previous years. And if you look at that, the green is the year that we're in now, FY25, which starts on the 1st of July 2024, like the FAMPO budget. And you can see there that 2025 and 2024, the very dark blue, the ridership has been much higher. So in the last 2 years, FX Vigo ridership has been meeting or exceeding the pre-COVID ridership numbers. So the numbers are actually quite good, but obviously bearing in mind that now post-COVID, there isn't a fee to ride the bus. It's fare free, but that has had an impact. You can see that the ridership has gone up. It's also gone up because people are more comfortable taking the bus now that COVID has died down. So, and finally, Jamie was instrumental in starting the buses an hour earlier. So people who are going to work can actually now plan to use the bus to get to work, whereas before, years ago, the buses started later in the morning and you couldn't really use it to commute to work if you were local. Next slide. The OmniRide routes, Bob's team has given us all of those numbers. So you can see there each of those routes. If you want to ask a detailed question, I'm going to defer to Bob because he knows the numbers better than I do. But there are all the routes. You'll remember a year ago, we only had one bus stop that took OmniRide buses in the region. Now we've got a whole range of them because all these new routes have opened up. And so that has obviously increased the number of people who are taking the commuter bus to DC or to the Pentagon or to wherever they're going. Next slide. Just a last comment from me in terms of, obviously, there's a new administration in Washington. We're seeing significant changes. Every time you turn on your television, you learn new information as to what's happening. We are monitoring that. It may affect our budget. We don't know. We got advice this morning, no, not this morning, on Friday, I think it was Thursday, Friday, of our budget, which comes to us through VDOT, and it seems like that budget is going to be an increase on the budget we had last year. We do not have any numbers for our budget funding from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, DRPT. They are not yet ready to put out numbers, and we will hear what those numbers are probably a month from now. I checked with them this morning as well. But we are monitoring it because it will affect our UPWP, our business plan, and our budget, depending on what the federal and state funding will be for FAMPO to run the operation. This is not project funding we're talking about. It's not CMAC and STGB and all of those things. This is just giving you just some comfort that we are watching this. We're talking to our state partners and federal partners, and we will let you know if anything changes or if there's new information that you need to have. We don't yet have a full picture.
Chairman? Sure.
Yes.
Nice presentation in terms of what's in this document. You have a legend. I was trying to figure out about the ridership, the 24 Fredericksburg Go ridership. Seems very high for Stafford County, showing 24,000 plus. What is the criteria? Because looking at Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania, nowhere near these numbers?
The total, I thought the same
The whole
thing.
system.
It's everybody, it's all the localities.
All the way, I was looking at Stafford and then,
So the total at the bottom is the total for all of the buses, not just for Stafford.
so Stafford is 585, 1524. Where's the criteria for these
722,
numbers?
1524. In terms of the count,
Yeah, how did,
Um,
because is it like
I saw-
single, is it like
I saw
one
Jamie
round
earlier.
trip?
perhaps we
How
can
do
just
you
ask
calculate?
Jamie how that is about, because I'm not familiar with the counting.
No, if I may, Madam Chair, it's every time a person boards the vehicle, that's where the trips are counted.
Oh, Chairman, Mr. McIntyre.
Yeah, that's fine.
Will is chairing tonight.
Oh,
Yeah,
so,
pinch hitting. Sorry.
so every time somebody boards the vehicle, we count that as a trip. So when you look at the ridership, it's every time somebody got on a bus in that particular county.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, on that note, Jamie, how is that trip calculated? Is that a clicker? Is that somebody walking through a scanner, or is it their app on their cell phone?
So it's every time a person boards the bus, the transit operator, has the system, it's the intelligent transportation system, and they basically press the button. And the first county.
Okay, thank you.
Electronic clicker.
All right. Any other questions? Sure. Ms. Jackson or Mr. Hollis?
I have just a question for Bob. Have you seen, I know we don't have the numbers for January and now in February for bus transit, but the commuter lines, is that going up like crazy?
It is not going up like crazy. It is definitely going up. Mind that we already had very strong ridership Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So now the return to work is infilling Monday and Friday. But many of the employees that were hired have pre-COVID employment agreement that the region has worked very hard because traffic is such a nightmare on I-95, especially on Fridays. So telework on Fridays is very common. So we're seeing definite improvement, but it's inconsistent. Where it's helped us a little bit is, again, filling up Mondays a little bit more on Fridays. The reality also is that a large number of people that were getting pre-pandemic are private, and private sector has not followed all the return to work. Contractors, K Street law firms, et cetera, they were already back for a lot of, lobbying, congressional work, litigation, et cetera. But the IT market, the cybersecurity sector, they've given up their leases in Reston. When you look at the vacancy of real estate, for example, in Fairfax County, they have almost doubled their vacancy rate of available real estate. Firms are not releasing locations, so you're not going to see the same recovery. The economy has advanced to telework and those kinds of things. So we are seeing an impact, but now also we're dealing with, I don't know if it happened, 5,400 Pentagon employees terminated today. That was the threat over the weekend. For us, our top performing routes in our system go to the Pentagon. The first route to recover post-pandemic was Stafford to Pentagon. So there's a direct correlation between Department of Defense. Our ridership was really focused on Department of Defense and Homeland Security. And those organizations are impacted. They'll have a direct effect on ridership, including in Stafford County and Spotsylvania.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes.
All right. Then let's move on to action and discussion items. So let's start with 9A, Resolution 2527, directing a public comment period for modification of the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan, LRTP. Ms.
Thanks.
Golden is not here, so
Ms. Golden
Mr.
is ill, so I asked her to go home, so I'll just do this. We're gonna
Thank
just
you.
give
Okay.
you the summary today. So we've got the slides up as the summary. Happy to take question on the detail. Just in terms of background, what we're doing here is that every 5 years, we are required to rewrite the LRTP, to update the LRTP. So we're about halfway in the cycle now, and some of the data is just out of date, and some of the information has become a bit dated. So we've looked at the LRTP and looked at which items are out of date or need updating. And when we finished, and I'll just say this frankly publicly because it's a matter of public record, when we finished the LRTP, after the fact, we received a number of queries from the Disability Resource Center and some of the other disabled organizations or organizations that assist disabled folks in the region. And they said, we feel like you didn't take our submissions seriously when you finished the LRTP, and that your goals don't include goals that would address people who are in wheelchairs or people who are disabled. So what we've done is addressed all of those things in one go. And we've now compiled some small improvements on just those sections where we felt there was data that was out of date or this request that we had. And so we've got these 3 sections which we would like to update. We've run it to the TAC. We're now bringing it to you to say, can we put this up for public comment? Because if you amend your LRTP, you're required to have a period of public comment. So next slide. So the goals and objectives, this is particular for the disability community that reached out to us. So we looked at some of the language and we didn't take anything away from what you have. We've just added some language that we will look at the needs of that particular community as time goes on. The copies that you've got in your packs that was emailed out has got red line versions of these to make it easier for you. So you can see whatever's in red, those are the changes. Everything else is exactly what is currently in the LRTP. So they're just a couple of small, you can see in black there, added the word accessible. We added increased options for accessible transportation. These are broad general goals. They don't tie us to a particular budget or a particular program. It just says we will look at the things of concern that were raised with us. Next slide. More of the same. That is, as it is a goal, it's not a program with a budget. So these are just goals that we would look at as FAMPO, ensure that handrails are available on rail cars and this kind of thing. Next slide. The Appendix C is the active transportation plan. Here, we've had a couple of studies completed. The Greenway study that GWRC ran was done after the LRTP was adopted. So there are a couple of new studies about bike paths or particular jurisdictions have changed their plan for cycle paths or sidewalks or bike paths. So we're just bringing the long range plan up to date with Stafford and Spotsylvania and the city of Fredericksburg, where they've made some changes to their plans so that the plans are all in alignment. Next slide. This is the travel demand management. This is really what GW Ride Connect does. Here, all we really did was updated the data. So the data was 2021 data, which was outdated. We've now updated it with 23 and now 2024 data, just so that the long-range transportation plan reflects the recent picture and not 2021, which was a funny year. We were coming out of COVID, people weren't taking the van pools, and things have changed. So we've just updated those data points in the chapter 5 of the long-range transportation plan. So those are the changes. And then the detailed chapters we've given you in 2, 3, and 4 in your pack with the red line so that you're not unclear as to what the edits are. Everything in red is an edit. So
Mr. Chair?
happy to take any
Oh, sorry.
questions.
Who's chair?
I'm
Anita.
well,
Yes,
sitting in
what's the chair?
for yeah.
Laurie needs to get up and move. Because,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you're getting stuck. So somewhere I couldn't find where I saw the changes when I read it about the Greenland station and the 2 changes for Stafford. Did you update it in this document?
So the long-range transportation plan chapters that we're updating here doesn't refer specifically to that
Oh,
project.
something about a study, did you?
Yes, so there are studies that we've updated for bike paths and sidewalks and that kind of thing. But we haven't done a wholesale rewrite. So in the long-range transportation plan, chapter 7, I think, is the finance section. And in there, in chapter 7, there are the tables of what we call the constrained long-range plan, the CLRP. And in there, all the budget items are for the projects that are in there.
I've seen them. Okay.
That's where those particular projects are mentioned with dollar values and all that kind of thing. With the tax agreement, we really, as we shared with you a couple of meetings back, are going to pause updating that final piece, which is the financial tables of the CLRP until the 1st of July. And the reason for that is we were waiting to see which of our smart scale projects were going to be approved for funding and which were not, because there is a rule that if the state or the federal government awards funding for a project through something like smart scale, you are required to add it to your CLRP. Until it's got funding on, you're not required. You can, but you're not required. But for example, the big project in Spotsy that has got 50 something million dollars, we now are required by law to add it. But the CTV only votes on this in, I think, June. Where is my
Right.
CTV? So we are waiting until June for them to fund, because as you know, the CTV can change the recommendation from the staff of OIP. So once they voted, we then plan in July to update those tables and any projects that have changed. And John is working on a presentation to bring you next month
Okay.
to show you the concerns we have about the future funding, because the project costs are going up and the amount of funding coming to us is not going up. And so there's going to be a mismatch between funding we have and needs that we have, but we're not going to bother you with that this month. We do have a presentation coming first to the TAC and then from there to the policy committee.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just have a question on going back to the accessibility issue.
Yes.
So are we, I mean, any of our road projects, is that kind of already baked in to some degree?
Yes, we have to consider, bike and ped and handicap accessibility.
Okay.
Falls into that with ADA,
So
on all the projects.
audible signals and all that kind of thing. VDOT has already got a program that when a traffic light is smashed or it's taken out of action and they replace it with a new one, they work on getting the new one to have ADA accessible facilities at that intersection. So it's a slow progressive rollout.
Right.
That VDOT is.
But there's no plan to kind of go back and modify what's there until there's a road project probably, I guess then, right?
Typically, yes. The only time we upgrade things is if, it's taken, signals taken out. ADA ramps are updated when we do our resurfacing. So we have a contract that follows along behind those. And if there were ADA ramps there that don't meet current standard, but met the standard when they're put in, I have to upgrade those. So something has to kick it off. It's not just we're going around and upgrading.
A complaint.
And do you have like a goal of your X amount there by this year, or is it really, I know it's just so hard to.
We don't have any metrics around the ADA or anything like that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's an action item today.
It is,
Not-
yeah.
The action item though is not to approve. The action item is, may we put it out for public comment?
I mean, is there a downside to everything? I'm sorry. Everything that I heard seemed very reasonable.
Yeah.
So
It's nothing, it's
Would you like to
It's just
make
up-
a motion?
just updating what we have.
I got you.
There are no financial implications, just so
Got
you're
it.
aware.
Then I'll make a motion to resolution 2527 to go to public hearing.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? All right. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's move on to 9B, Smart Scale Round 6 summary, Ms. Eves.
Good evening, everybody. So this is just the summary of the OIP staff scenario. Next slide. All right, so we, FAMPO and GWRC together have one project funded and up to 4 total in the district. The next 2 slides are all of the changes that occurred, but I'm not going to go into them because right now our understanding of these things is evolving pretty rapidly, and we're going to have a workshop with all of your locality planners over the next couple of weeks to kind of dig into these and understand them better. And when we have better answers for you, we're going to come back and talk to you about it. So skip over these 2 and go to this one. Oh, back one. There we go. So this is round 6 compared to the other rounds. What I want to draw your attention to is the number of funded applications. So you can look here in the last one, round 5, 164, and this one 53. That was by design. They wanted to fund fewer, larger projects, and boy, did they fund fewer projects. Quite a bit fewer. But that was in part probably because we only had $1 billion this time, whereas last time we had 1.6.
Can you just say that again? I think people need to get this.
Yeah.
We had 1.6 billion for the CTB to approve, and this last cycle, there was only $1 billion. That is a massive drop in available funding. That is big.
Yes.
And isn't it accurate, that the reason that it went down because they used money from the prior year for the inflation increases in projects, or?
There
But
was some.
That's what the
chicken.
secretary said when they produced these slides. He was giving his comments and he said at least 200 or so, 250, 200 million of the money that was not available this time. He said we advanced projects from the last round that where the price had gone up because we became concerned with the inflationary increases, and it's better to get them in construction now than wait until the inflationary increases go up even more. And so his comment, it's not my comment, but his comment in the meeting was that he said it's about half and half. Half of the reduction is because we spent it on the last cycle projects because of the inflationary increases. Half of it is because we have less money from, does anybody know what the other sources were that there's less money from? Was it gas tax or something?
Yeah, there's a couple different things, and you remember better than I do.
600 million less.
Yeah, the Secretary Miller said some stuff, and then.
Yeah, that's so helpful. He said a lot of stuff.
Commissioner Bridge came back and followed up, so I would go back and listen to what the commissioner said. The commissioner provided some background. And if I knew that was gonna be a question, I would have asked the commissioner what
But
give it. Do you remember what? And it wasn't just inflation, but it was changes were made to how gas tax was being collected, the district grant program, and so there's more money in those years because they did advance projects because of the federal government had more money in the system, was my understanding. But I will ask the commissioner to repeat what he said. That's who you need to listen to if you go back and listen to the meeting, because he came back and clarified what Secretary.
We're doing a workshop, and so I think we'll look at that again, but what you need to know is
Listen to what Commissioner Bridge said.
I can
not
do
what
that and
Secretary
come
Miller
back to
said.
you with a better answer next month, but I do know that we had 5 years extra of DGP that just ran out, and last year was like the last year of it that we had it. But there's a lot of factors, and we can dig in and come back.
But just the key point is that you have 1 billion instead of 1.6 billion. That means a lot less projects have to be funded. And here for me is the kicker, and I'm sorry I'm interfering with Carrie's presentation, but here's the thing. They told us to give them bigger projects.
Well, that's another
But
slide.
they never told us that they had 600 million less to give out. So when you tell everybody, we don't want your small bicycle projects, we want big projects, we then give big projects, but then oops, we have less money actually. So that is a massive
Opportunity for projects.
problem.
Staffing has 0.
And based on inflation, this is the lowest amount of funding ever given out.
There you can see the lowest.
Next slide. All right, so our staff recommended funding scenario summary. You can look at us for high priority projects, which is what MPOs and PDCs can apply for. We got 16.8. We got one project for that. Whereas Richmond got $255 million worth of projects in HPP. So quite a big difference there. But out of 9 districts in the state, 4 got none at all, the HPP.
Not
So-
1 cent,
How did Northern Virginia not get anything?
not a cent.
Well, we're looking into that.
I like that.
Sure,
I
Northern
like
Virginia
that
is
part.
looking into that too.
Hampton Roads was second though.
But
So-
Richmond took it
Well,
away.
Richmond's
Richmond
got a
got-
slide of its own, Ian.
Carry on.
Next slide.
Have you researched?
We're getting $93 million. We're looking into it.
So-
Take their money and give it
It's,
to us.
hang on, it's not the Culpeper County, it's the Culpeper District.
Yeah, which includes
Which
Charlottesville,
includes
Albemarle,
Charlottesville.
all that area. It's a big district.
It's the VDOT district of Culpeper, it's not Culpeper County.
So this is the Fredericksburg district. It's not just the Fredericksburg district, actually. This is just us. This is just GWRC stuff. So Caroline County, that top one there was the highest scoring in the whole state. They got a perfect 100 in safety. So good for them. Great. But we only got the one HPP down there. The third one down was Route 3 pipeline. And then the US 1 South Point Parkway intersection. So Spotsy put 11 million local match on that. But one thing to note, our one HPP project, it was small, only 16 million, no local match, but it didn't score very well. The lowest funded HPP project was 4. We scored just a little above that. So we didn't do awesome. And our average project cost was 25.5 million for this one. Next slide. Whereas for round 5, our average project cost was 12.8, so half the time. Next slide. Richmond District, on the other hand, this is their haul of the statewide 384 million HPP funding. They got 255.8 of it, 66.5%. They allocated 63.4 million in match funds to receive 338 million state funding. 50 million of that was RTA. So it could be said they bought the pot, but probably more complicated than that. And we're, like I said, looking into it.
It is more, but there is money, but they also scored well. And
They scored very well.
we're gonna have a committee that's gonna look at why did they score well and why did we.
We are
Why
analyzing.
can't we sabotage?
Next slide.
Chairperson, I'm gonna not.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it. I wish I did,
Yeah.
but I didn't hear it. Next slide. All right, so the white ones are unfunded, the yellow and blue ones are funded, but these are all of our locality and regional projects. Local match mattered unless you had a small, strong project. Basically, the score is the project benefit score divided by the dollar amount requested.
And what you need to grasp is that last sentence. You take the score, you divide it by the dollar amount requested. So if your dollar request is high, your score is going to crash.
So if you look at the one on top, Spotsy County's project, it had a very good project score, 32. But when you took that dollar amount divided, knocked it down to 5.65. Luckily, that was high enough to get funded, but just barely. So, but you look at a small project that doesn't cost very much, like Caroline's project, they put nothing down, but they still came out with a very high score because it was a really strong project, 100 safety, and didn't cost very much.
I have a good question.
Yes.
So Garrisonville Road, for example,
Mhm.
I don't understand why it's sitting there for 3 years in a row. It should score higher if the criteria was a little bit different because it moves so much traffic from east to west, just like 17 and Route 3 and 234. How in,
On the face of it, I agree with you, and I have been looking at it, and I'm gonna look at it.
so is there
some more.
something that should be like making change in the criteria? as
A
to-
lot of its problem is its cost. Nothing over 49 million got funded. Nothing.
So the cost here was 67.
I love how they
But
said
the-
give you expensive
That's
projects and then.
right there.
Cause we would have done a third of that phase.
Right there. Give us your big projects. We want really big.
But it's not
projects
just
this
only
time.
about the big project also, it's the way how, not one of those high priority like Salem, is that the South Point Parkway? How is that identified?
It's scored well. It's what's equal to 11 million in match funds.
I understand that, but I think Garrisonville,
We have pretty good match funds.
Yeah.
for American.
right, so I'm kind of surprised. What is the difference between
The-
The score.
the way, the score is high, it's just the way how use
First
the
of all,
criteria for Garrisonville Road.
the project total cost for South Point 70 versus 100 million for the two. So the percent put down made a difference.
Is it considered a secondary road or,
Yeah.
what is it called?
Second.
Secondary road versus a US one, that's it there. But I can look at the scorecards and Garrisonville is one of the ones I'm looking at for a case study.
We need to do better with that one, for sure.
We want to share more detail with you, but we don't want to do it tonight.
Oh, sure.
We're gonna meet with your staff and with Swansea staff and with the city staff and talk through each of the criteria and look at where did we do badly, which criterion was problematic for us. You remember the changes to the methodology of the technical guide by the CTB in the January of the cycle. They made significant changes to the buckets. So the bucket that is congestion, the bucket that is safety, the bucket that is whatever, they changed those percentages and we never got a chance to comment on that. It was pushed through very quickly through the CTB. And that was problematic because it helped Richmond and it did not help the other jurisdictions in the B category like us.
If you look at us and the other B category localities versus Richmond, Richmond is a city. Are we a city?
The rest of the,
Is
Yeah.
Salem area a city?
Yeah.
You know, is Charlottesville, Albemarle really like little areas of city, but it's starting to think like Richmond's very different from some of the other B category areas.
it is, and
There's a lot to think about.
so its congestion score will be different, its safety score will be different. The one that Spotsylvania scored so well on, because they got the highest congestion score of any project in the state of Virginia. That's why it got funded. If it wasn't for the congestion score, it would have struggled. But
Yeah,
it got an
that's true.
amazingly high congestion score. And that's what got that project through. It was really high. But we're going to give you some of that detail next month. We just want to first meet with your staff and workshop. What can we do better?
Mr. Chair, so does the state, from what I understand, they kind of hold close to the vest how they analyze all these projects? I don't feel like that's very transparent. Why can't we, and maybe Marcy can shed a little bit of light on this, but how are we learning from our experiences by not really being able to compare ourselves to other localities? You know, I mean, I'd kind of like to really sit down with, you know, project X, Y, and Z here, one in Culpeper, Northern Virginia, Richmond, and go, okay, now we see how they're analyzing these. This is what we need to do. But, you know, I feel like it's a chess game over there, and we're only seeing some of the chess pieces, not all of them.
We're playing checkers.
Yeah, we're playing checkers, exactly. So, I mean, Marcy, do you have any comments on Richmond and how it maybe even compares to other states in the United States? And how
I
they
don't know
do?
how many states have a prioritization process like we do. I can't speak. I will tell you that VDOT is just as confused, because this is done by 4 people. This is not VDOT.
I know.
So we also have many questions that sometimes get answered and sometimes do not get answered.
Right. And therein lies the problem. And you know what? We all sitting in this room and we represent our constituents, right? And our constituents don't have the answers. They're not getting the answers. And that is wrong. That is wrong. And I think they need to have a more transparent process. And that if Richmond's gonna get all this money, then maybe we need to have another conversation about an RTA. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't have helped us at all. But without having any facts in front of us, it's hard to make decisions sometimes. And therefore, I just really, it's not a fair game.
All right, I'm also,
The thing that we can't see is the maths. Math, the big black box. So they tell us the criteria, they tell us, roughly what's important in each criterion, but we never get to see how they got to 27, right? They don't show us the math inside there. So I don't know what to push up to get a better congestion score because I don't see the math. I only see the result.
And so part of it, if I may, could be subjective. You know, maybe 60% of it is math and 40% of it is subjective. We don't know, right?
Sure, capricious, really.
Exactly.
And then they move the goals
I-
following year.
Yeah, that was actually the question I was gonna ask, like, do we have any sense from this about how it's gonna work out in the 28 cycle?
Oh, the round seven, we
The answer
don't,
is no.
because they could decide to change everything.
Right, okay.
Every cycle, every 2-year cycle, they do tweak the technical guide.
Mhm.
This cycle was a massive tweak.
Mhm.
We don't know what the next cycle is going to be. They started with survey, so we filled in the survey,
Which.
and then we don't know. I am aware, and I should make you aware of this, that FAMPO is drafting a letter to send to the secretary and the CTV and everybody saying that we would like to be part of the review process of the methodology. Because VAPDC was involved and lots of other state bodies were involved in the workshop to discuss, but MPOs and their representatives were not. So VAMPO says, hey, that's not actually okay. When you do this evaluation process, we would like MPOs or VAMPO to be invited to the discussions about the methodology and strengths and weaknesses and evaluation. The letter's only in the draft format yet, so it's going to be a while, but the chairman, Amon VAMPO is the chairman, they drafted a letter which we're busy tweaking.
Or
So
open up
the
this can.
gist is that whatever lessons learned from this process are gonna be of limited utility. Going forward, or? All right.
So we will go immediately into a review, my
Mhm.
understanding, and I don't speak for OIB, CTV is as frustrated probably as everybody, right? And we go back to those votes, I voted against these changes. Because, and the one that I see that hurt us the worst was land use was removed, and it's still, I still don't understand how it's being done. And economic development, there's a factor, ED1 was changed, which has to do with economic development sites, and they're based on VEDP sites. And that appears to me to have hurt our district
Yeah.
and helped Richmond
It
a
did,
lot.
it did quite a bit.
And so ED1 seems to be where we kind of messed up, and it's weighted 60% under that economic development algorithm. And so that's, to me, just as looking at a very high level review of it, seems to be where we suffered compared to Richmond. But we will go into a review process, and it is a learning curve. And so what I will put to you guys is meet with your colleagues throughout the state. This did catch Northern Virginia's attention. My colleagues from Northern Virginia were like, oh my God, I don't know if they've ever not received money. I mean, the rest of us are used to getting shafted in this process, but Northern Virginia walked down and was like, yeah, we're reviewing this process. And
They have lots of money.
so they had money put on it, and so it's not a money issue. It is understanding these algorithms and how everything is playing together. And if you look at what's the difference between the Spotsy project there at 126 and the Stafford project, those are two different areas. I mean, you can't even compare those two places. And coming from North Stafford, we want to assume that they're the same, but Massaponax is huge. I mean, you got 2 hospitals. And if you count Mary Washington being up the street, you have 3 hospitals with the VA center there. But you have tons of apartments, tons of housing. So just tons of stuff right there at 126. You cannot compare what exit 126 is to what Garrisonville Road is. And I think to me, that's probably why we're seeing the difference there. But going forward, we're gonna need to look at ED1 and land use and figure land use out. And those were big discussions by the CTB. And we just we didn't get it right, but, so I would challenge you guys to talk to your colleagues, talk to your MPOs, talk to the PDCs. I tried to get my colleagues on board, I didn't.
I would agree with all of that, except one emphasis I'm not sure I agree with, and that is that if your project costs more than $47 million, the money is an issue. Because the only way that you will get it funded is if you put in match for all the rest. So if the project costs 100 million, they're only going to fund you under this current set of criteria about 47, 48 million. So the rest, 50, whatever it is, you're going to have to pay. So it is over 47, 48 million. It is a money problem. Below that dollar amount, I agree with you. But when you go over 47 million for a road, which a lot of them will in the future because the prices are going up, then you have to have lots of match. Otherwise, you won't get the project funded at all.
They only had 383 million for the whole state for HPP, so they weren't gonna be doling out about that much.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
this question,
yeah.
so when you're talking about that, you're gonna look into this. There's nothing that can be done. Are you just looking into it for the future?
For the
To
future.
try and figure it out?
We
Okay.
can't change anything. We want to understand it.
Yeah.
So we can try and do better. There's a lot to
Okay.
learn, and also so we can provide useful feedback for the CTG for this review they're gonna do. They need to know what we think about all this.
Okay, we could hope.
Yeah, sure. You know, I think I'm correct when I say this. One of the interesting things is what happens is after this comes out, then FAMPO looks at, hey, how could we do better? And then your staff all sits around this table and fights with each other for the next 2 years over how to adjust and tweak the formulas so that each locality gets a piece. So just keep in mind that there is a downstream flow. The TAC ends up taking these issues up. So then the next cycle of this, okay, how will we get more? How will Spotsylvania get less? Because that's been the last, year? Discussion.
So that can happen in the district grant funding because they're competing in the same pot. But it doesn't work like that in HPP because you're competing across the whole state.
Okay, thank you for.
So if we're good, we could actually get all the money in HPP. I mean, it'll never happen, but in theory, if our projects are the best, we won't compete with each other locally. We'll compete with the people in Richmond.
Okay.
So we potentially in HPP don't compete with each other. We're competing with the whole state. The district grant funding, and Marcy can correct me if I'm wrong, but the district grant is a ring-fenced pool. And in there, yes, the jurisdictions compete. But FAMPO and GWLC can't apply for district grant funding. So the jurisdictions will fight with each other, but not with FAMPO.
Yeah.
We only can apply for HPP, and that's where we've traditionally got those higher amounts of funding. But we're dealing with.
All right.
But this is the notion being that this is the example of the after effects that then come localities in that highly competitive environment. I was incorrect. HPP, obviously I'm the road guy. So, but it's just a challenge that, you'll face in a different format, in a different iteration.
Okay, next slide. This is just our HPP funding success over the rounds. This is the worst one we've done. Next slide. Summary. So on your digital packets, you can click on the here word to see all the scorecards and compare them yourself. The rest of that, like I said, our highest scoring funded regional project, Route 3 Pipeline, was 10.81, lower than the average benefit score for an HPP project, which was 1770. So it's not all about match, it's also about the scoring rubric and our projects. The last thing, every project that was not well communicated or required last minute changes was not funded. So I want to stress for the next round, close cooperation for all of us, VDOT, FAMPO, GWRC, and the localities essential to success in HPP. We have to coordinate as a region. All work together, do better.
Thank you, Ms. Evers. All right, if there's no further discussion, let's move on to item 9C, the CMAQ CR STPG prioritization methodology. Briefing from the TAC deliberation.
Yeah, John and I will do this as a tag team. Let me just introduce this by telling you why are we telling you this, right? It's always like, why are we doing this? We've been working with the TAC on this idea that if we find a formula to allocate the money to the 3 jurisdictions, we then don't have to have your projects compete with each other. You will get this percentage of funding to your jurisdiction every year. You will know in advance what percentage you're getting, so you'll have a rough idea of how much you've got, and you can decide in your jurisdiction which of your projects you want to fund, provided it meets the federal regulations. FAMPO will not tell you what to do with the money. You do it yourself. We have worked with the TAC and we've explored all kinds of options. We've come down to about 4 options. And where we are now, and John will show you what those options are, is we've got one locality really keen on the one option, and another locality really keen on the other option, and one locality who's like, I'm going to do well whichever one you pick, so we don't really care. So I am asking you all to go through just this brief update and then to give me advice and to perhaps give the TAC advice what you think we should do going forward. Because we haven't yet been able to get all 3 jurisdictions on the same page as to which of these options they think can work for allocating via the formula to the jurisdictions. So we have to either come to some sort of agreement as to which formula to use, or we're going to struggle. So we're looking for advice from you. That's all it is. You don't have to vote. There's nothing I'm asking you to do. Just give us any advice as to what to do next.
Well, Mr. Chair, so I would hope that you're gonna tell us why they're not in agreement.
I will.
Perfect.
John's going to quickly go through it and I'll add in where I need.
To the next slide, please. Just keep going. Go through this quickly. So currently we distribute about 90, a little bit over 90% of our projects towards project applications that the city, Stafford and Spotsylvania compete against. Typically each jurisdiction gets about 10 applications. Often, sometimes they're kind of paired together because they can kind of go through 2 different pots of funding with 2 different scoring methodologies associated. They mirror each other to a bit, but they do deviate. Next slide. And from that, we look at what type of project that is. So we score roadway projects against roadway projects, sidewalk projects against other active transportation, as well as studies. So it kind of becomes you get to pick and choose which projects you're going to compete against. So one jurisdiction might submit all roadway projects and it competes in the roadway. Another one might do active transportation. And then others will do transit, but also like Fredericksburg, the other transit partners can also put in applications on the behalf of jurisdictions. So there's a formula of how we break the pots up across the most, but not necessarily which projects get funded. So next slide, please. And it follows just slightly a bit different between those. And then we have this other random kind of pot of funds, the carbon reduction funds. It's about $240,000 a year that follows along. That's kind of just dogtailed along with the CMAQ funding. So between these 2 pots, we get just a little under $6 million a year, but depending on the years, that can actually vary. Next slide. So in previous rounds, if you look at all the rounds, we have a breakout of about Spotsylvania getting 42%, Stafford getting 30%, and the city getting 17%. And then again, we distribute about 90%. And then you have everything else, or regional set-asides or regional projects that are kind of hovering in this 11%. However, if you start looking year to year, things get a lot more goofy, where you suddenly have a year that a jurisdiction will receive no money, or another jurisdiction will receive well more than half. And just because it's 1 year this, 1 year that, 1 year it could be 6 million. The other year, we might get notification, hey, you actually have another $300 million to spend. So all of a sudden, year to year, that formula kind of gets messed up. That if you have a year where there's surprise money and a big winner, you can see folks taking a lot bigger pie than if the next year it's a lot different. We don't always know what the amounts are going to be before the submissions are required. So FY27 looked like Stafford got through whole. Fredericksburg actually I don't think had a project in that year. And then the last 2 calls for projects on Spotsylvania has been really competitive with Stafford receiving less money. Next slide. All right. So we looked at options. Again, we're trying to come up with a formula that distributes the funds to the jurisdictions without actually the jurisdictions kind of competing against themselves as well. So that's what we've been looking at in discussion with TAC. We've actually come up with a lot of different formulas that looked at everything from economic activity to population, and even employment factors. And the TAC has kind of slowly settled on between about 2 different options that then have 2 sub options. So first one. So the main one that we've been looking at is population. There's one option that is strict population, divide based on the population for each jurisdiction. There is kind of a certain wrinkle within that. For congestion mitigation air quality, that might be a little bit more of a challenge. For STBG, it's very flexible funding, that's easy. Carbon reduction starts requiring other things like you have to show an improvement to air quality as a requirement. And there's a little bit more unease about that being distributed solely for that reason. The idea is that's supposed to address congestion. Then we have another one that's a population plus urbanized population. We kind of looked at, we noticed that a lot of the modeling roads that shows that are urbanized here, so where those hot red roads typically be. So in that one, it was kind of looking like we're going to give each, population, each resident $1, but if you also live in the urbanized, you get $1 more to go along with that. So it kind of starts distributing to where the congestion is. The other option was looking at where daily vehicle miles traveled occurs, and we're using a VDOT source from this. If you kind of look at the feds are actually the least updated, then VDOT, and then some of our commercial partners actually do have a little bit more options. And so we're also including other set-asides as well, pre-existing. So like the TAC recommended that a 7.5% for transit be included. The GWRC and FAMPO also receive a small set aside, and then the Stafford TMA has 30% of the STBG funds dedicated to it. Next option. So option 1 breaks down. It kind of breaks down to Stafford gets about 1.4, Spotsylvania gets about 1.1 to 1.2, and then a smaller breakdown for Fredericksburg Transit and the other set aside. For STBG, that other kind of dark blue color is the TMA area that's required to be spent in that area for the benefit of the TMA. Next slide. If you go straight, we can go through the numbers individually. Next slide. So with the population flat, again, the population kind of curves back up for the counties with this one, with Fredericksburg receiving less funds, but it kind of stays about the same. You see this 1.2 to 1.4 number showing up again. Next slide. And those are the breakouts of the items. Next slide. And now we're looking at DMVT and populations. We're kind of normalizing for population and roadway miles here. But once again, you see about 1.3 for Stafford, just under 1.1 for Spotsylvania, and then a little bit more for Fredericksburg in here. It's just under $500,000. And you see that trend continue on to the other side where the Stafford TMA is standing at the exact 655,000, but everybody else is kind of adjusting around it. Next slide. The next slide again, the numbers. Finally, the TAC asked us to remove I-95 from our vehicle mileage travel calculations, and it remained fairly similar. Again, you have 1.3 for Stafford, 1.1 for Spotsylvania, and then Fredericksburg dropped a little bit to 389,000. And again, the kind of trends continue for STBG with the TMA money remaining constant. Next slide. Next slide again. And so if you line everything up, you kind of see that we're kind of all narrowing in a specific window. Stafford looks to be getting about 2.2 to $2 million on each cycle, along with the $655,000 dedicated to the TMA. Spotsylvania kind of fluctuates in between a low of 1.67 million to almost $2 million. And then Fredericksburg probably varies the most, but it's jumping around about that $400,000 to $700,000 range. So we've all kind of landed within, for the city, it's about $300,000. For Spotsylvania and Stafford, it's about $200,000, give or take, either which way you try to divide it. So that's kind of where we're at. And we haven't been able to.
Yeah, so let me jump in. So we had about 7 or 8 options. We've reduced it to 4 options. Of these 4 options, one jurisdiction, well, let me just be frank, each jurisdiction picks the one where they get the most money. I mean, it's that simple. It's that simple. Now, your staff are gonna find it difficult to argue for a case where their jurisdiction doesn't get the most money. Because like you employ them to try and do the best for your locality. However, if everyone does that, there will be no meeting of the minds in the middle and we won't get this thing decided. So you're the political leadership and plus some extra folks from the state. I'm just asking for your guidance on the process because I don't want to frustrate everybody, but maybe you have some guidance that we could take back to the TAC and say, this is what you think. So, you know, Spotsylvania will pick the one that's good for Spotsylvania, the city will pick the one that's good for the city, and Stafford will pick the one for Stafford, although Stafford, I think at the moment is the staff of Stafford are the most kind of, the variation isn't significant for Stafford. And so Stafford is more happy with most of the options at this stage is what this at a staff level. However, at a political level, we have to pick something or we're not going to be able to reach a conclusion. Now, I'm not asking you to vote on this. I'm just asking for your advice. What should I do as the administrator? Because you're my boss. And maybe you can give me some guidance or you can give the tech some guidance as to what you think the tech should do to take the matter forward. We're down to these four. And I think that the two extremes are the two ones that the other two jurisdictions are picking.
Mr. Chairman, which one is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right.
Which one is the one that Fredericksburg has the highest amount? Was that 1A?
In 2A, right?
Is it 2A? Can you go back to?
2A.
Oh, it's right here.
2A there,
Sorry, your
that's
head
better
went away.
for Fredericksburg. And option 1B does better for Spotsylvania.
So 1A is where, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it.
So I guess because Stafford, I would be good with anything but 2A. So I guess the question really is to Spotsy, because Stafford's pretty much even everywhere else. Where would you guys want to be?
My question is the DVMT rubric, and I need to be reblued on that a little bit, but that seems to be like a flyer there in all the statistics. So
what do you mean by flyer?
like it stands out. It's not consistent with the trend on the other three options. You know, there seems to be, you go back to that previous,
Which one? What's the number?
the one you
One.
had up.
Just scroll down
Yeah, there you
there.
go.
Just stop there.
Like you mentioned, Stafford, you're kind of in the same area. We're kind of in the same area, even though 2A, but it just seems.
Well, that's because population screws the city over, right? And you guys both get more money as a result
I know,
of
but
that,
DVM,
right?
yeah.
So John-
That's why, yeah.
John, could you just explain one more time what VMT is?
So it daily vehicle miles traveled, divided by the roadway mileage. So we're actually looking at how much, traffic is serving on a per mile basis within each one of the jurisdictions.
So it's a measure of
And
congestion.
then we also add a qualifier that says, okay, now multiply across population again. So it's not just if you can run all the numbers high on 95 for a section that you're going to get the most money. It is, let's look at how much traffic is each resident having to support based on each mile roadway in each jurisdiction. So, for example, Spotsylvania and Stafford actually run up the DVMT a lot faster than the city does. But if you start looking at it on a per mile, then the city starts doing well. And so then add population onto it kind of rebalances that. So it's really looking at how much traffic is each resident actually having to shoulder within the region. And that's kind of the impetus of that model being used of, you know, if you have 10,000 vehicles per day per mile of road versus 4,000 versus a population, it was kind of let's look at all these factors as to where we can kind of stitch them together to get like a more holistic approach to that. So that's why you see
the purpose of this money is to deal with the impacts of traveling. That's why we get this money from the federal government. They say you have congestion, you have air quality problems, you have whatever other problems in your system. We're giving you a portion of money to fix the problems. So what we really should be trying to do is to spend the money where it's going to fix the problems. What we're trying to do with the formula is to give the jurisdictions the control rather than FAMPO the control. Because otherwise what you do is we have a big argument once every cycle because we have to now be the arbiters, right? And we would rather not have to do that. We would rather that you get a regular sum of money. It won't be that dollar value. This is based on the 2030 figures that we allocated last round. So this grows every year. So it's not going to be the same dollar value every year, but we use that as an example to show you the impact of each system. So the two on the right, 2A and 2B, they use basically congestion and population to determine the money. The two on the left only use population.
Councilor Gerlach had his hand up. I want to make sure to get.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
I want to continue this without me messing it up. So.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Is it logical to ask this or to go down this road? If your transportation moves through your jurisdiction north-south, don't you benefit from DVMT? Like the city-ish and Stafford are going to have more traffic as opposed to Spotsy's kind of like feeds from the west or whatever, and then gets on 95 or whatever and goes north.
The Stafford and Pennsylvania are extremely close in their vehicle miles traveled and their roadway network. Like they're within percentages of each other there. Really the question was because we're also kind of considering a population was Spotsylvania did not have the longest stretch of 95, and there was a concern of whether or not that Stafford's stretch of 95 is longer than Spotsy's. Is that concerning, or is that an undue weight against Fredericksburg as well? And that's the reason why we have a DMV per facility mile, because that kind of solely negates that, as well as addresses the population concern. So we looked at a DMV only, like DVMT only metric. We looked at a roadways only metric. Like we looked at a few more that Ian alluded to, as well as the population. And through the time, we're like, well, if you stitch this one to this one, it kind of solves that problem. And if we have population also be a factor, it kind of starts rounding out the equation. So it's kind of getting towards that, but still keeping it as a formula that says, we know the numbers, VDOT publishes the numbers, we know our population census publishes those. Any jurisdiction can basically run the math on, on their phone calculator real quick to see if anything weird is going on.
Don't the commuter miles actually are being fed or coming from? Couldn't they be coming from Spotsy there?
But it's the congestion. It's not where the people are from. It's where the congestion
I'm
occurs.
looking at just the visual footprint.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So if Spotsy commuters are causing congestion driving through Stafford County in the morning, then Stafford County would get the dollars to fix the problem because that's where the problem is. Even if the people causing the problem are from Spotsylvania. We're experiencing the problem from Spotsylvania, but that's not where the problem is, right?
And this isn't meant to pick on
Right.
Fredericksburg at all. I mean, I get it. We drive through here. I come here every day and work right around the corner, and drive all through Fredericksburg. But it just seems like that 2A option just seems out of balance. I don't know. Maybe because I'm hearing what you're saying, but I'm not. I need to kind of see it like rendered, I guess.
So we will do whatever you suggest, but the two in the middle tend to push it to the two extremes. The two on the sides, 1A and 2B, are more moderate because it sort of balances. So the 1B and 2A, you either go to the one extreme or to the other extreme. The two on the outsides, nobody wins totally and nobody loses totally, but I got to be careful because your staff have to answer to you, not to me.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Question.
okay.
So the regional set aside for transit, is that FXB Go then, mostly? What is that? Is it for?
So that was suggested by Spotsylvania, and it can be for FXB Go, or it can be when VRE has another station upgrade, or if OmniRide, I mean, they're sitting in the room, but they don't often apply for CMAC or S2GB money. I can't remember when they last did. They generally don't. But VRE does when they have a upgrade.
Right.
When there's an upgrade, then they do. And FXB Go does for rolling stock or equipment like the tower that needed to be erected
I was also add, like, there are certain things that say a transit agency can't purchase solely for the benefit of one jurisdiction. So if, say, a transit entity wants to provide new rolling stock, a new bus, they can't necessarily have, say, Pennsylvania County, I need money for a new bus, but you're the only one who can use it. That would
Right,
not be
right,
permitted.
sure.
So that's kind of getting it, there's going to be certain regional things that they can't attach to a jurisdiction that would be able to tap in for that reason.
Right. Well, I mean, just throw my thing out there, because I think we could debate this till midnight. I'd go 1A or 1B. Well, do we need to vote? We don't need to vote on this.
You don't need to vote, I'm just looking for
Then-
guidance.
Guidance.
Say again?
Do we need to vote ever?
Yes, we will have to bring this back, once I've taken it one more time to the TAC.
I would like to,
So we have to take it to TAC first.
There's no have to in this world, but I think it's a good thing to do to let the TAC finish the process. But I'm looking for guidance to the TAC.
Can we have them just provide feedback on 1A and 1B?
no,
No,
absolutely.
No, they have to look at all,
Fair to.
but, we
I'll see
could,
if I
we
have-
could say
We
what.
got,
Like
Ms.
to-
Parker, Ms. Bumke, and I would like to actually say something.
So,
This won't be popular.
and you will probably boo me out of the room.
Boo.
But- So most of this money comes to me anyway, because I have to deliver the projects for you. But to me, this goes against the whole theory of regional transportation. As Ian mentioned, you know, we are a regional entity, we're supposed to be making decisions as a region. If you do this, then money gets left on the table, bigger projects can't get done. I mean, yes, Spotsylvania is getting a lot of money right now, but in the past, Stafford's gotten a lot of money. Currently, the city has a lot of projects that are coming to fruition. It just sort of goes around over time. You know, I've been on this committee for 11 years. It just kind of goes around. And this kind of theory has been in other counties that I've worked in before I was even here, where unpaved roads, every supervisor wanted their 1 mile. And it just was not the best for that locality. So as a regional entity, I disagree with this 100% and think that the money just needs to go to the projects that score the highest or the ones that need to get done.
I like that.
I'm not a politician. You all have to make that decision, but
I hear, Marcy, that the problem with it though is that then we have a fight every 2 years and
but the fights are way less than they used to be.
Wait,
I have
wait.
to say.
wait,
That was before you
That
even.
was before me.
what happens in practice is that every round, the staff of the jurisdictions want to change the metrics because it didn't go so well for their jurisdiction last round. So then I bring to you, look how many years I've been here. This is about to be the end of my 5th year. Every cycle, I've had to bring you a whole lot of CMAC changes because the staff don't like what happened in the last cycle for whatever reason, or they just don't like the metrics at all. One of the, I won't say who, but one of the representatives was that the congestion metric doesn't work. It doesn't capture the effects of congestion. So now we got to go look for yet another way of capturing congestion, and I don't have one. I don't know what to do to keep that need satisfied, to actually find a metric that measures congestion. So that's the problem. The problem is we're going to keep every year changing the score so that we can make a better deal.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Yakubowski, and Ms. Bumke had her hand up before.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we just cycle through like we do with chairman? This year, Swansea gets the top project, then it's Stafford, then it's Fredericksburg. Then next year, we do the next one. I mean, seriously, I know there were fights years ago and they were nasty and stupid, but there's fights all the time about all kinds of things. We will fight about this in the future. There will be fights. And I know what you're trying to avoid, but I don't really want to come up with a way to fix something that doesn't fix anything when we're spending this much time and staff time on doing this, when it's really not a lot of money, quite honestly, in the big scheme of things. And I think we could all agree that Stafford, you got a project, fine, as long as you support ours next year or the next time that CMAC funding comes up. I know it's 4, 5, 6 years in the
Board
future.
changes. Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I mean, I appreciate that perspective and I certainly understand what Marcy's saying as well. But I think with the changing of the guard, changing of elected officials, depending on who comes on the board, you know, let's say you have somebody that comes on and they're like, well, I don't really care what prior elected officials, you know,
Yeah, well,
agreed
like
to.
you said.
You know, we're not doing it that way anymore. And then they get the votes to, you know, and then some jurisdictions gets left out, gets left holding the bag. So,
Let's be honest, nobody knows what CMAQ money is until you're on here for about 2 years. So.
you know what?
Year in, I think I know what it is.
No offense, guys, but
Liquid gold is STBG, you can use it for anything. What if you averaged all of these?
Well, so that was actually where I was gonna go with this, right? Can we go back to that, was it maybe the second or third slide? Where you have the, over the past 5 years, the percentage distribution, right? That one, yeah. So I'm struck on this, right? That the city has over the past 5 years averaged 17% of the money, right? You can see some years we didn't get anything, some years we got 10%, right? I guess presumably there were other years in that window when we got more to drag the average up to 17. But to Ms. Parker's point, right, if there's any wisdom in the way we've been doing it so far, right, those numbers should reflect on some level, right, like what this money should, the rough approximation what this money should be going toward. And under all of these proposed options, the city's percentage goes down, sometimes by half, right? Like, if you use 1A, or I'm sorry, if you use 1B, the straight population, the city gets 8.6%, right? That's less than half of what we have historically gotten over the course of the last 5 cycles, right? And I can't believe that there's wisdom in a formula that leaves the city in a situation where it's getting less than half the money than we've been winning through a competitive process over the course of 5 cycles, right? If our congestion is bad enough that we've been winning on average, we've averaged 17% of those funds, and we come up with a formula that gives us 8%, right? Like, that is not a formula that reflects reality, right? And I would point out that all of these options actually get the city less than 17%. Now, the closest one is 2A, which gets us 16.4%, right? So that's close enough, right? That's close enough to be average, right? But if we move from a presumably, if we trust our process at all over the past 5 cycles, right, then presumably these numbers should be somewhere probably in the ballpark of the distribution of need for this fund, right? And if we come up with a formula that says the city gets less than half, right, that doesn't strike me as at all like it's not the revealed need of the region, right? If over the past 5 years, anyway, right, the revealed need of the regions that the city gets.
Did you say less than half?
Yeah, the option 2. I'm sorry, option 1B, which is the worst one for the city, right?
It's less than
Gets 8.6% of the total funds, right?
less than half. I wasn't sure what.
Yes, less than half, right?
Half of
Under that option, under option 1B, we would get 8.6.
Less than half of the 17. that-
Yeah,
Okay.
of what we have historically gotten over the
Gotcha.
last 5 cycles,
Okay.
right?
I wasn't
So
sure.
we're talking about, and I understand why the jurisdictions like that, those population-based options, because you guys see your money go up. But I would point out that money is because we're then getting our ox gored by like more than 50%, right? And if this is wrong, then that's one conversation. But if our process has produced anything like a proper distribution of funds over the last 5 cycles, then that number can't be right, right?
Mr. Chair, to that point, there's no doubt that the congestion miles and all that have increased a ton, right? And clearly the city's choked, east, west, north. But the 95 component is what bothers me. So looking at 2B as a starting point seems to be at least taking into account as a starting point.
Yeah, and
that's what's going to change when 95 gets completed past 126. Are our numbers going to go up on 95 too? Or?
Yeah. Well, so 2B takes out 95 from the equation completely.
And so the city gets 13.4% under option 2B, which is at least closer to our historical baseline, even if it's low. It's at least closer, right? It's not 50% of our historical baseline, and that's the one that really upsets me.
To kind of mitigate these the congestion at the projects too, right?
But
That is the
we
goal.
would still have to meet certain requirements.
CMAQ is called congestion mitigation and air quality. That's what it's actually
All
called.
right, Councilor Gerlach, if you.
So the reason I had my hand up earlier was mentioning exactly what you said, and maybe to consider an averaging of somehow of these columns.
But we need a kind of a formula so that we can apply it.
Yeah, you have to have.
I mean, I think that 2B is really the most fair because it takes out 95. And, you know, we can't do it just based on population. I mean, that's not equitable. And we're here in a planning and transportation committee. So I think, you know, we have to take into account the congestion. So, you know, I think the first two are kind of out and I don't know.
It's not like 2B2.
I mean, if we want to do something like that, I think that makes the most sense, maybe. You know, if you guys wanted some more money, maybe we reduce the regional transit.
So why don't we let them take it at the attack and let them come back?
Yeah, I think
Give it some, instead of.
I don't think that, I think we need to provide guidance.
Okay, so what's the
And-
guidance?
So our staff is telling us that this provides a dedicated revenue source for the transportation program, which is why they're leaning toward having these allocations put forward. And our staff is very much in favor of this funding methodologies. I don't know if your staff gave you guys the same feedback. I'm in favor of 1A and 1B because I do think you have to look at the population because these are the people on the roads. These are the people who we're having to serve to get on and off the roads. That's why Stafford County gets the Northern Virginia additional funding percentage. And so that was the reason these were set up, is to serve the localities with the higher population. The city gets other revenue, they get better calculations on other things from the state. and
We would be
federal
left if we didn't.
government. That is
Please
because
stop
we're not-
moving those slides and please go back to where it was. Just to clarify something, and not interfering with your opinion, just to clarify something. All four of those options use population.
That's what I was going to the methods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying.
So
I
the ones
understand
with
it, but I-
DMB also use population. It's half population and half congestion. It's not one or the other.
But what you guys said about the transportation authority or the transportation funding for, what is it, the Northern Virginia, what is it called, the initial?
NVTC?
Now, are the stipend
our-
we get for basically
right,
10,
right.
whatever that, it's population based. That's the sole marker they use. They don't use population plus DVMT. So why would we make our calculation any different? I feel that's the direction that it's supposed to go, and that's the way the funding should be allocated.
Because the.
Congestion.
It's not what it is, it's where the congestion is, right? Because if you're a driver from Spotsylvania County stuck in traffic in Stafford County, right? You will count as a resident of Spotsylvania County for these population calculations. But the congestion you are causing or experiencing is in Stafford County. So even though you live in Spotsylvania County, Stafford County is the jurisdiction that needs the money to fix the
So
congestion.
then you're just
Right, so the
arguing
money
that-
needs to go where the congestion is, right? Rather than where people's home address is. Because people cause congestion in other jurisdictions,
But where is the
right?
congestion in Fredericksburg that they're marking on this DVMT? Because where is it?
Well,
In
I would-
one little sliver getting on 95, is it going to the mall? Like, because I'm telling you, the congestion is in Stafford or right when you're getting on Route.
Well, that's kind of amusing from.
Yeah. Right?
Right.
So,
Total.
So I think that, what do you need to know for the
For the tax.
CTAC? Yeah.
Well, guidance on what you think we should do going forward. Should we remove one option and carry on? Should we do what Marcy suggests, which is stop the whole thing and just have the score? Or should we pick two and tell them to choose between two? I mean, it's whatever you want. I've not come here with an
Mr. Chairman.
agenda. I've come here honestly to just ask you for advice.
let's
Mr. Chairman.
go, yeah.
I don't understand why we need to, these are not children we're sending it out to. So the same thing that we receive, let them do the same thing, let them fight it out.
They've just done it.
They just did
They've
it.
concluded
Yeah,
that each
that's it?
jurisdiction
Sorry.
picks the one that gives them the most money. So
So why are we sending it
If-
down to whom then?
That's what, he's just asking for guidance. I'm ready to make a motion. I know which option I'm voting on.
Yeah, Councilor Gerlach.
Yeah, we'll these numbers are gonna change every year. Is that right?
That's why
Yes.
I think it's more productive to look at the percentage numbers and not the dollars.
So every year, the result is gonna depend on the previous year's numbers, not,
No, my understanding from Mr. Allis is that he's talking about fixing these percentages for some length of time,
Yes.
right?
And
So
then they
if,
will give us money, they'll give us $7 million next round or something. We will just divide it up by the formula and you will get that money. And the trend has been that it increases slowly over time. So every cycle we get more money than we had the last cycle. Can't comment on the current administration in Washington. I don't know what they're going to do, but generally it slowly increases. So we would just take the formula and apply it, and then you get the dollars out. What we're doing here by showing the dollars is you always want to know what the bottom line is. So this page just gives you the bottom line based on the 2030 allocation that we made last year.
Mr. Chairman?
so can I finish, can I follow up? So if we have projects, say, in the city of Fredericksburg that reduce the congestion in the city, okay? Wouldn't we change the formula for the following year? At least have some number that,
not the proposal, we would be capped at 8.6% per year if we, for example, if we went to option 1B, no matter what our need was.
So
it's taking a point in time and locking it in.
you can review this because every 5 years we get new population figures, right? So every 5 years you can review, we can update it with the new population figures, and then you will get over time the percentages will change, but not every damn year.
Not every year, okay.
Yeah, whatever.
But we can see progress in 5-year increments of where congestion is being addressed appropriately and where it isn't.
We can get the DMVT every year, but we can only get the population about every 5 years.
Okay.
Supervisor Paul.
So I think the other thing to take into consideration, I think why our staff is, having some angst about this is, gas tax monies are continuing to go down. Look at what the state just did with Smart Scale. There's not as much money out there. They're trying to do the big DRPT high rail from DC all the way down to Richmond. What's that, SJ 28, how all those funds are allocated, and, everybody's trying to fight for their piece of the pie.
Absolutely.
So, I really kind of get it. I forgot about the email, and Supervisor Banuch mentioned that, that our staff sent. So, I understand what Marcy's saying. I understand what everybody here is saying, but I also feel like if you're asking for direction, then we need to give you direction.
Can I just make a motion? I'll make a motion.
Second.
And then,
All right, any discussion? There's a motion on the table.
oh, motion, who's the second? Nobody sent a second.
Staff.
Oh, you didn't second it? Oh, okay.
I would
Did you want to go first?
apply
No,
against doing comments.
I got a motion.
I
Yeah,
think
but discussion. So I just.
It would not be in the scope of the motion.
Oh, I got you. I just wanted to know the percentages that we received, that first circle, the 17%. What year was that again?
It's an average over the
That's
past
6 year.
Oh, it
6
was,
years.
it is an average, okay,
It's a
gotcha.
6-year average of what we have actually done. That's where we.
So, but
gave-
you don't have the real numbers, like said this year was 13,
Yeah, we got
16.
it.
Yeah, you have that?
Well, if you look down there, you can see
I
the.
was looking at this last night and I don't,
The allocation.
in the
Oh,
document.
it's on our website, like every single project that we've applied funding.
Why are you
FY
asking us if I'm supposed to know it was there? I'm
So if you look at the screen in front of
Yeah.
you, at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the dollar values that were allocated in the last 6 years. There they are. And that's who got the money.
Let me just say, yeah, Counselor Holmes.
When you were coming up with this and the vehicle miles traveled, and that does talk about congestion some, yes. So these aren't arbitrary. It's not that, when you're looking at this, it's because there are vehicle miles traveled and there is congestion in Fredericksburg. So it's not coming out of nowhere. You all are using the data to come up with these numbers based on traffic and congestion.
We did reach out to the federal highways to ask them if we're even allowed to do this. And their response was, you can use population only for STGB, but we're not so keen on you using it for CMAC as population only. But if VDOT doesn't object, I'll let you do it. That was the kind of advice we got. And VDOT hasn't objected. So we're in a situation now where they don't really like us to use population only for CMAC, but they're happy for us to do it for SGGB. So one of my suggestions was, well, why don't we pick the one method for the one and the other method for the other one to try and reach a compromise? But I did not manage to convince anybody to go with my suggestion.
Well, let me just say, I think population only, like, honestly, it just represents a resource grab at the expense of the city, right? And you're talking about looking at our averages, right? Which unless the system is being gained, which if it is, it's not being gained by the city. That represents the approximate proportion of traffic need, right? And any metric that slices ours in half is functionally an intra-regional resource grab between jurisdictions. And I'm on Marcy's side on this, right? I think that is very much not in the spirit of regional cooperation or regional approaches to transportation problems. I mean, that's functionally all this is.
The fact of the matter is that folks in Stafford use Spotsy roads, folks in Spotsy use Stafford roads, and everybody uses Fredericksburg roads.
And people in the city drive to the counties too, right? Yeah, Ms. Baum.
So when you talk about regional cooperation, I feel like I would be remiss on behalf of myself and a lot of others. I want to remind you guys that you're saying regional cooperation, but we didn't get regional cooperation when it came to the disclosure of the Neon project. We did not get regional cooperation and disclosure regarding the overlay district that you guys are discussing and the fact that you want to put data centers back there. And we spent $600,000 as a regional body on taxpayer funds, with taxpayer funds to do a study. And we didn't have full disclosure from the city on any of those projects. And we didn't have a no build option. And so, you can sit here and say regional cooperation this and regional cooperation that, but your words are one thing, but your actions are showing us something different. And so, we know that you're about ready to vote tomorrow on the river crossing and maybe put one of the options in your comprehensive plan, but yet we haven't, as a body here, had a full flush out of that entire thing. And I would like for the CTAC to come and make a presentation to this entire policy board on the advantages and disadvantages of all the different options, because, and this is a little bit of off topic, but from what I understand, you're leaning, and this is just hearsay, towards option A. And I don't really understand that when that is the one that, you've got to build 2 miles of roads. It has more environmental impacts than anywhere else.
Can we have a motion on the table? Can we focus, which is related
Well,
to this?
it is related because you started talking about regional cooperation. So, let's really talk regional cooperation if you really mean it.
Let me be clear, the Transit Overlay District is not vacating any right of way, right? For any of these roadways. This is a land use decision, right? It's a zoning level decision. The right of way is being vacated, right? Right of way would have to be acquired for any of these options, no matter what.
So you're not making.
But at any rate, I feel like we are getting straight here from the question of,
Well,
those are on the table.
Yes and no, yes and no, it's
1B,
related.
right?
It's related.
So, I'm sorry, the option was for
Unless
1A.
you want less money, then I can amend mine.
That none of the options gives less, that gives the absolutely least to the city.
It
That
does, yeah.
particular one.
Yeah, 1B is actually the worst, I believe.
Yeah, 1A gives
Oh, sorry.
more.
Yes, it's some.
Yeah.
And these are just figures based on
Last year's amount.
last year's.
That's why I think it makes more sense to look at the percentages because the percentages are what get fixed in the formula. So whatever the total pot of money, that's why I've been focused on this question of percentage, right?
Yes.
Rather than dollar amount, because that will fluctuate, but it's the percentage, correct, Mr. Hollis, that is fixed from year to year?
If you choose one of these models, then the percentage will be fixed. And every year we will allocate the money on the basis of the percentage. So you do need to be aware of the percentage because that will have an impact. And like, I must not say anything because I'm
So, Chair, then, rather than be held hostage for 5 years, waiting for numbers to come in and adjust, is there a way we can do it on a shorter? So if we did look at 1A, and but yeah, there was an offer 3 years later to reconsider.
So 1A only looks at population. It doesn't look at anything else. And we don't get verified population data. Well,
You get
it's- Census Bureau doesn't put it out every year. So we've just had the Weldon Cooper who based theirs on the Census Bureau, just given a 5-year update.
And
And they will then give a 10-year update when we have the census. So we get, every 5 years, we get reliable population figures.
reliable,
Ish.
you have some that you estimate, right? The population growth that you could use.
John, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I'm aware, they don't publish, the Census Bureau no longer publishes every single year population data. They're doing it every 10 years for the census, and every 5 years they publish an update.
Yeah, so they do generate a estimate based on growth, but I mean, Weldon Cooper also does a similar thing.
It's a computer.
It varies, and you see when they do true counts at census, you see it snap back.
Because they've been using a computer approximation, they don't actually go out and
Oh, I understand, that's why it's not accurate.
Northern Virginia uses.
yes, but the region is different. It's different in that they have like 9 or 10 jurisdictions.
The META.
MBTA uses total population. Ish. They have also set asides that they take off the top. They pay WMATA, the DC Metro, and off the top allocation first. For transit, they got a whole bunch of off the top things, and then they use population. But remember, they don't have one small city surrounded by counties. According to their official list, they've got a whole bunch of little cities. See, so they don't have just one. So it's a slightly different thing. The worry here, frankly, and I mean, I can say this because I said this to you at the beginning of this process. I think that Fredericksburg has a disproportionate burden of traffic to its population, because its population is only 27,000 people, right? But it's not my, this is not my decision. I do whatever your wisdom.
So you mentioned the FHWA said STBG was fine with population.
Correct.
But not necessarily CMAQ.
Correct.
So have you run a scenario that does STBG based on population?
Yes,
And the CMAQ money based on the DV?
we have, and it's sort of a blend. The city won't be wonderfully happy with it, but it's not as bad as just this kind of population. It doesn't get you anywhere near your 17%. Like, John, can you remember the percentages? It's like,
No, but it lands in like that $450,000.
Yeah.
For the city. I mean, every single option thus far that we've kind of worked through and advanced as a metric has kind of landed within the ranges you see here. Like, you're kind of seeing the two extremes of the ranges. So
of all the options we looked at, 1B is the worst for the city and the really good for Spotsylvania. And then when you get to 2A, it's the other way around, right? So that's why I said those two in the middle are the kind of real extremes. The two on the outside are the more moderate versions.
So we have a motion, right?
Well, Councilor Joe, like, we're still.
So earlier today, I asked myself, Chris, I think this is relevant to population. What is the density per square mile of population in our 3 jurisdictions? Which I think is really interesting. It's 340 per square mile in Spotsylvania. It's according to Wiki, so, take that for what it's worth, but, I mean, it's not gonna vary that much. What was it, 340 people per square mile in Spotsy. Stafford has 560 people per square mile. The city of Fredericksburg has 2,700 people per square mile. So I don't think population is really an accurate reflection of what's going on in terms of density of where the people are located. I just want folks to keep that in mind. Maybe we should be talking not just population, but I think congestion is a function of population and density.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to push back gently on just to put it in kind of.
And back up here.
Because Livingston, Berkeley are vast, urban or rural areas,
We
right?
feed your density.
Yeah. Whereas Portland,
Lee Hill.
Lee Hill, and
Battlefield.
Battlefield are probably as dense or closest to being as dense as probably Lee Hill and Battlefield for sure.
Yeah.
Because you can't even tell the difference between the city and.
So you have your dense areas is what you're
Yeah, I'm just
saying.
saying that, and those just so happen to be the main areas where the congestion is. So the argument you're making applies to us in the dense.
Right.
In the dense.
Population is not evenly spread.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we have Quantico, which is in Stafford, which is not even populated, so, and so that marks our number down, but we have areas like Embry Mill, very densely populated.
But I think we can agree that there are.
I mean,
clusters of population.
I feel like we're kind of stuck on trying to decide the formula based on these choices, and we're kind of willing to throw 1B and 2A out to kind of figure it out, or at least that's what's being said. But can't we, in some spirit of something, adjust on the margins a little bit? Mark, is there a way to?
I don't know, Dak
You
came
know.
up with this stuff and staff.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I mean, this is a political question.
Yeah.
This ultimately it becomes a political question, but a perspective is, when I was in Tennessee 20 years ago, 25 years ago now, they had a state allocation, chunk of change, millions of dollars went to the state every single year, and the state didn't decide who got it. All the transit CEOs sat around the table. They carved it up. Because Jackson, Tennessee desperately needed a bus garage, and there's no way that their percentage formula would ever let them get a bus garage. We needed 25 vehicles for our fleet. Otherwise, we were going to have vehicles that were going to break down. We needed better engine quality, all those different things. But the allocation was basically over a 10-year window, because cycles and all of those things, it was sitting down and making decisions based on what is the history of performance, what projects, and when is it time? When is it the opportunity? Which projects? And part of it was, and this is, I think, an example that's relevant. As you pursue new development opportunities in your localities, your numbers are going to go up and your numbers are going to go down. And there's going to be the year where Stafford needs all the money, because it's a relevant project for the region. It's going to improve the economy. It's going to improve, but it's going to create congestion. It's going to create congestion for everybody on these side projects. And that's at the heart of, I think, what Marcy's talking about. This is a real life example of it. That's why it becomes a political question, and it's how you wish to solve it. Marcy and I were just discussing, we're both going to abstain from the vote because it really comes down to you as that, but it's a perspective just
To that point, I would rather have this kind of emotional chart, our discussion over specific things. To have the money come in and go, okay, we all know on FAMPO what the priorities are gonna be. So have the discussion about how to carve it up.
And that exact example is there will be projects. And forgive me for not knowing what we're talking about, Lee Hill District. There will be projects in Lee Hill District that Fredericksburg will go, please, yes, let's fund it.
Like Lafayette Boulevard.
And a really great example of this is Route 28 from Prince William into Fairfax County. If Fairfax says hell no and Prince William says hell yes, everything hits the wall and traffic is backed up for miles.
So is there a way, because yes, all four has a formula in it. But I was thinking, for example, we pick one. And then when the time comes, when a project exists that a district or a town really need, that we all get together and say, yes, this is important. Spirit of working together as a region, we will then put some money towards that because it's not enough for us to do anything this year anyway. Can we just put something in there and or agree? But it needs to be written because based on what we said before, new officials come in and they change their mind. They say, hell no. Is there a way that could agree to that?
So, I mean, I
I
hear
guess
what
I'm
you're
done.
saying, Pam, and I think in a perfect world, that would be the case, but if you're gonna do that, it needs to be in the bylaws.
That's what I'm saying, in writing somewhere.
And,
Just aspiration.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would have to be in there, and I just, I think, well, like I said, in a perfect world, I think that would be the case, but it's not gonna be.
I
But
think
according to the rules, we have to have a methodology that we follow, right? We can't every year only have a political discussion. We are supposed to have prioritization methodology of some kind, right? So even if it just says give 50% of the money to them and 20% to them, that's a method, right? Not one I would recommend, but there must be a written down some form of method that you use that is your agreed method. But there's no detailed rules about what kind of method it needs to be. But you can't have only a political discussion. We need to have some sort of a method. And at the moment, we've got the existing method, which is you score the project and then next year change all the rules and then score the projects and then next year change all the rules. That's what we do now. And Marcy thinks that's fine and that's okay. Marcy and I agree often and sometimes disagree. That's just the way it is. And then there's the Northern Virginia method, which is do a formula and then tweak it slightly at the end with the political discussion. So just do it by formula. And if there's some issue with that, then you do this. You have a discussion about, okay, your project is going to be short by X. Maybe we do that. But we do need to have some kind of a method. So you either have this kind of a method or you go back to the old method, which is the scoring and then fighting about what is congestion really. And then the academic people on the panel start to argue that that isn't actually the right way to do it. And that we can do it. We've been doing it. We've been doing it every year since I've been here. But every year we've had to change the methodology because someone isn't happy. And it's going to happen every year, every cycle, because now we're doing it every.
But that might be okay, right? I mean,
If
I'm
that's-
actually struck by Supervisor Mullins' point, right? Which is like, if we're gonna have passionate arguments, let's have passionate arguments over actual
Or just
pavement,
make deals.
right?
Hey,
Instead
I'll help you
of
out.
formula.
there's nothing prohibiting a locality, if they have the project, to do a joint MOU with Stafford County or Spotsylvania and say, hey, we know that this is gonna be congestion impacting Stafford and city of Fredericksburg. Let's go in on a joint MOU to get this project done. What we're looking for is a guaranteed revenue source. Like because transportation funding is drying up all over the state, our transportation department needs more methodical and predictable amounts of money that they know they can build in as revenue. Be able to say, okay, this project will fit into that. Because right now it's like a crapshoot, and then we're like, oh man, it was $1 million over. Oh man, it was $10 million under. Like if we would have put in a $6 million project on Smart Scale this year, we probably would have won something. We have 1 million of those, and so I think that's what we're trying to do, is make it more predictable. And even our staff was like, in the beginning, like when I first was on the board on FAMPO, we were getting Stafford was getting it every single year at $3 million. We agreed to then change it to give the other localities more percentages. So that's what ended up bumping up the city of Fredericksburg, because they had some very specific projects to get accomplished. And so I think this gives us a very predictable funding source. Let's try it out for a few. We can't, who's to say we don't try it out for 2 years, see if this works out, and then we change it again. We've changed it 3 times since I've been on FAMPO. And so I think we're kind of mincing words and arguing over something. But for me, to be able to give our staff through a budget process, a predictable funding source to say, here's what you can expect from FAMPO. And instead of this unpredictability of either all or nothing every year, I think we could give it a try for a few years and see if it works.
I'm gonna agree with you, and I just want to state for the table, for the room, that I just have a problem with the DVMT.
Yeah.
So I just feel like
Yeah,
that's
I do too.
that's a moving
I do too.
target, and if, you know, using the city visually, the traffic, I live in it, and I drive through Battlefield on Lafayette and Route 1, and it just seems like it's the same kind of congestion, so why is it so skewed? So I think that should just be put to the side, and we should be looking at these formulas that are dealing with some, either composite or just population.
So I'd like to just call the question on this. Gotta vote. I want to go to bed at 9:30.
All in favor of Supervisor Venusa's motion in favor of option 1B, say aye.
Sorry,
Sorry.
can we just clarify?
1A.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
All abstentions?
Sorry, I didn't actually count those. Did somebody?
No, so I think we gotta do it again, because I don't know if we got it.
All right.
All in favor? Can you put your hand up so I can count them, please?
In favor
Favor of
of
1A, 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
Aye.
5, sorry, I missed you. You're sitting like behind me here. 5, okay, that's 5.
All opposed?
1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 5 to 4
It's 2 abstentions.
with 2 abstentions.
Now, this will go back to the TAC though, correct?
No, I thought it was already at.
Okay,
That was not the
Motion did not
motion.
say send it back to the.
All right.
They approved of all four. Our staff approved.
all right, okay, all right.
Okay.
All right, let's
Okay.
move on
Oh.
to item 9B, the new post river crossing modeling. Cost estimates.
The reason I haven't put this in your pack as details is because this is quotations, and if I do commercially sensitive material, instead of involving you in a closed session and all that palaver, I can just tell you that we can probably get the modeling done for the new post river crossing for about $20,000, right? So that's what I
Mr.
think
Chair,
it realistically will cost.
Can we just kind of take a beat on that for a minute? I mean, I'm just speaking, I think if Chris and Drew, since it is new post, and I know it's Stafford too. I was just thinking, we need to just take a second
Have
on
a
that,
pause.
just wait, because I think we need to speak with the rest of our board again.
Okay.
On it, because it's $20,000, right? Just table it for like, yeah, for like a month, so
That's
I
fine.
make a motion to table it until the next meeting.
I'm not sure there was a motion asking for action anyway, it was just
Well, I was
informational.
asking whether you wanted me to request the TAC to fund $20,000.
No, not right now, table
Okay.
till next month. So we can have a conversation with our staff on that.
Okay, fine.
Are there any consequences?
No, we just pause the study
Yeah.
because we haven't hired a consultant or anybody, so it's all being done by FAMPO staff. There's just the one item that we can't do, and that's why we needed it.
Yeah, we need to have more conversations on that.
Okay,
All right, let's move on to item 9E, travel demand model congestion with and without Carol speaking, George.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this really quick, or try to, for you all. So the next slide, you may remember, you all had originally sent a letter to Virginia Secretary of Transportation. He responded that a 3-minute increase in average travel time for the region was not a significant increase. But that was the average travel time for all 5 GWRC jurisdictions, and you asked us to find that average travel time increase for just the FAMPO jurisdictions, Stafford, Fredericksburg, and Spotsylvania. So we did that. And so you can see this top row across the chart is for the GWRC jurisdictions, which is what the secretary referenced in his letter or his response. And for just FAMPO, the average trip time change increases from 2022 to 2050 by about 30 seconds more.
per call. Would you just stand to this?
Yes.
There.
So we have the average trip time, distance, and speed for 2022 and 2050 up here, also how those change.
Before you leave this slide, what you have to also realize is that the distance you travel is going to reduce. And that's a sign of congestion. You're gonna travel shorter distances because getting in your car and driving out there is gonna be congested. So if you look there, the bottom row, FAMPO, the distance in 2022 that you would travel on average is 5.84 miles. But when you get to 2050, you're gonna be driving 5.3 miles for your average trip. So the amount you're gonna want to drive is gonna shrink because you're moving out into congestion. But the average length of time you're going to take to do that shorter distance is longer. So you're going to drive shorter distances, but spend more time in your car doing that shorter distance, and that's a sign that there is congestion building up in the system.
But only in staff. I'm kidding.
It really is true.
It's the whole thing.
All right, so what do we need to do with this?
So
It's just
we're
FYI.
just answering, no, we were asked a question by members of the policy committee. We're providing the answer. This is the answer.
Keep the horn.
We've got 4 more slides, but it's real quick. So go.
We just broke this up for how long it will take to travel 1 mile, 2022 and 2050. The green is GWRC, so you can see it is taking longer to travel 1 mile, just a different way of thinking about this average trip time.
That guy's running a 4-minute mile.
This is it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Olympic levels.
So you're only gonna,
Athletes.
so you're only gonna be driving a little faster than the Olympic runner, right? It's not great.
All right, and next slide. Now those figures were based on the peak period in the model. We also did this for daily averages, and you can see it's like a minute difference between GWRC and FAMPO when you're doing the whole day average of how much.
The congestion is here, not in Carolina Kingdom.
And next slide. Another significant thing is that the all-day average in 2050 and the peak period average in 2050 for average trip time, it's about the same amount of time to travel 1 mile. Essentially, the difference in congestion measures throughout an all-day average and peak periods.
10 o'clock, same as 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get congestion during the day,
That all
not
day.
just in the peak hours. And Bob's been telling us that for how long?
5 years.
So
That's where we're headed.
March 2020.
that's all.
So the secretary's letter is not wrong, but it focused on the whole of GWRC, including the rural areas, which don't affect you if you're driving in a congested road in Stafford. You don't care about what's going on in King George. You only care about your road that is congested. And rightly so, because that's your experience. Done.
Okay, let's move on to item 10, the staff and agency report.
So these are just for information only. So I'll take any questions and won't even speak.
Okay, item 11, board members and chair comments. Do we have any?
In light of the information that came out of the river crossing, and after reviewing a lot of the information, I feel like that, in my opinion, policy committee should perhaps have a presentation from the CTAC. 15, 20-minute presentation on all the different options and the advantages and disadvantages of them. And have an opportunity to ask questions. So I would like to see that at your meeting.
Mr. Chair,
If possible.
when would you, I'm just, for planning purposes, like, when would you like to see that? I think next meeting, you all will be having some information about your TOD, right, for us?
Yeah,
We
I'm
were-
also working on our comprehensive plan. We'll be finalizing sometime in the middle. So we'd want to do that before we get too far into the conference.
We were
'Cause we-
hoping that the city would come back to us at our March meeting of the policy committee with any
Right.
information they have on what's happening with their data center project and whether,
Because we told the consultant pencil down
yes,
until after that
and
occurred,
come
right?
back and come back.
So
in
would
March.
it be too much to expect that plus CTAC coming for a presentation the next meeting? Would that be what you're looking for, Meg?
I mean, that would be great.
Okay,
After
So-
by then.
So we were planning to ask the city to, at the March meeting, give us just a short update. This is where we are in the process. This is what's happening. And then give any instructions to the consultant as to what they should be doing next. So if you want to do that, I mean, and have one big meeting about the river crossing, that's fine, but that's up to you to decide.
So maybe it would be the right time, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no,
you know,
you're in charge of this, so.
but, and maybe it would be the right time to have the CTAC do that at the same time, right? Because right now the consultant is frozen until we give additional instructions.
So we do one read tomorrow night, then our second read would probably be the first meeting in March. Right?
Our meeting here would be like the
So-
17th of March.
17th.
About,
Patrick's Day.
so the timing would be after our second read. So we would have some certainty.
Some feedback.
Some feedback.
It's never certain.
And I would just like to,
Right.
just inform people that we do have a rezoning that was done a while ago that is, on the other side of Sanford Drive and I-95. It's a project that's M1. I don't have the specifics on how long ago it was rezoned, so, anyway, it's not a new rezoning. It's been out there for a bit. It wasn't rezoned under my term, so. It may even be by right, but
Yeah.
anyway.
And I think there's a distinct difference. Things that have been rezoned, projects that are kind of being started after.
Correct. Yeah, I just wanted to let people know.
That would-
Why would they make an option right across there if it's already been approved years and years ago?
Get more information.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, we're debating an overlay district, which basically is no right of way is being vacated, right? And any right of way that would be vacated, right, would present us an option to negotiate with the developer for alternative rights of way, right? For river crossings, right? So you guys are acting like this is a done deal, right? We are trying to juggle a lot of different priorities about what's best for our constituents, right? Including a river crossing, right? As well as, right, key piece of our economic development strategy, which I think you guys should well recognize because it's the same as your economic development strategy at this point, right? We are doing our best to balance those two things, and we have done nothing yet that has foreclosed any of these possibilities, right? And these possibilities are very much part of our conversation with this, right? So I hear what you're saying, and I hear your concern, right? But I think everyone, the committee is a little bit over its skis in terms of what has actually happened and what is actually being discussed, right? You're talking about creating a possibility for a data center campus in this area, right? We are not yet vacating any rights of way, right? And if a developer comes to us and asks us to vacate a right of way, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I will absolutely say, okay, but give us an alternative right of way elsewhere that works with your plans, right? So I don't want to act like, I don't want to have a funeral for this thing before it's actually dead, right? We are trying to, just like every other jurisdiction here, right? Balance this, which I think is a very important strategic regional need in terms of transportation, with our own need, right, to make sure that our city's budget is healthy into the future, right? We are balancing those things.
So two things. One, the city of Fredericksburg approached Stafford to reinvigorate the river crossing.
Yeah.
So because of your economic development needs. So that's how this all got re-originated. Second, why would you not put in your comprehensive plan when you're doing the technology overlay zone, the routes of the river crossing, so that at least you're saying this is.
That's what we're working on. It's literally what we're working on right now.
But
Yeah.
the information that I've seen doesn't have any of that with your technology overlay zones. So can you send up the FAMPO committee, policy committee, the comprehensive maps that show where
That's like
you.
literally what we're working on right now. Yeah.
So you have those, you have
No,
maps.
listen to what he's saying.
You're working on them now, after you're holding a public hearing, after your planning commission has already provided a recommendation, after you've already done public hearings to solicit public comment. So why would you have not done that in the
Two
very
separate things.
beginning?
Plan is totally separate from the TOD.
But, and I understand that, but I'm saying,
Separate sets of public hearings.
why can't you put in the technology overlay zone, the routes to the river crossing, the different options in there, showing that those are exempt from the overlay zone. Why can't
You
you?
can't, it's an illegal proffer. You can't.
That's not a proffer. You're
Yes,
just
it
not,
is.
that is not an illegal option.
It's a takings. It's a legislative takings. Cannot do that.
No, you're not taking it. You're just saying this is reserved for the overlay. We do that all the time. That's not true.
Pay fair compensation.
We're not, no one's taking the land. You're not saying this is the county's land or the city's land and we're taking it from them. You're just showing potential, potential river crossing route here, overlay zone not included. Like you can make the overlay zone outside of your river crossing.
Because if we set aside all four, right, there would be no.
You're not gonna
So
attract
then-
that data center developer if you show all four additions.
So there, ergo, why we're all concerned. You guys are fictitiously trying to route it to option A and exempt option B and C and D because you want what you believe is best for you and you alone. When you talk about regional cooperation and coordination, you should absolutely be mapping those off. I think we all kind of talked about options 1 and 2 as the best potential. I don't understand why you would move forward with actually voting on an overlay zone when you guys brought this forward to drive your economic development. Now you're trying to shift gears.
I've always looked at you, Crystal, as a master of looking at the. That's what we're doing. Bill. Okay, don't play this two-faced game. We're all looking out for ourselves, each and every one of us. Okay, let's not make it something it's not.
It
We're all
absolutely is,
looking
and I
for the
take your
economic-
insults very personally, and it's incredibly inappropriate as an elected official to sit here and insult another elected official. I think you are completely misguided, and we're trying to look out for the entire region when we talk about this river crossing. And you guys have literally gone behind our backs, you voted on a rezoning, and now you're doing this technology overlay zone, and you're trying to hide it, and you're trying to force it under option A. That is absolutely what you're doing. You legally can mark the map.
I'd like to, as chair, let's put this, we have Supervisor Bomke's request on the table, right? That Supervisor
Yes.
Hayes will take into consideration
Yes.
as she's laying out the agenda
Yes.
for the next meeting or two, right?
Yeah, but I think we could do it the
Okay.
next meeting.
Anyone else? Any other board members have comment? Okay,
All right, then I will entertain a motion to, oh, I'm sorry, you do, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you. I just wanted to mention the VRE item. I mentioned it in the GWRC. I just wanted to mention it again about the letter in the 2 projects. No, it came like sudden. We were just, one day we had the email and the other day we were at the VRE. I was wondering if there's a way you can all use about this letter to let us know early so that we are not caught off guard. So, but if you didn't, then we understand. See what we, see about, everybody was. And you all mentioned it.
Oh, the funding.
The older
Yeah.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, so all I'm saying is that I think that, we will caught off guard. And I was wondering, yeah, well, it's being cleared up. All I'm saying is that we were not aware in the whole VRE, everybody got it. It's like
Send the letter.
40.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
we can talk about it
Yeah.
offline, just so our meeting doesn't stay.
Yeah, no, but I'm just talking about in general.
Well,
There's something that
the
you have.
executive director of PRE did say that her staff was aware of it, so we can talk about it.
Yeah, but anything that you all
I'm-
get early.
I'm aware that they want to shuffle some money, but I haven't seen the letter.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I will,
Turn.
motion to adjourn. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Sure.
No one's-
I appreciate it.
All right, yeah.
Do you need help outside?
No, I'm good. It's just.